Hello my dear friends, and welcome back to another Star Wars news update. Today we have a couple of pieces of Star Wars news, and then we're going to dive into a discussion about Star Wars in 2024. So to begin, this update came out of left field. I wasn't expecting anything like this, I'll be honest with you, but it appears as though The Mandalorian was the most watched streaming original of 2023. Who would have thought? With all the criticism and all the discussion about how viewership was so low on the third season, it dominated the 2023 streaming originals chart. This comes from TheWrap.com, and they say this: Star Wars reigns supreme on streaming in 2023 as the Disney Plus mainstay The Mandalorian ranked as the most watched streaming show in the US, according to data compiled by Whip. Rankings were determined by streaming original TV series among a balanced panel of US users of the TV Time app. Mando Season 3 had the usual 8 episodes and started streaming in March. But even after the season came to an end, the show continued racking up viewership, so it didn't just die off after the 8th episode. And I will just say guys, this data is from January 1st to November 30th. So for Mando Season 3 it wasn't just March 1st to April 19th, but also viewership of the series afterwards. Plenty of people wait for the entire thing to release before then checking it out. There's a lot of rewatch value for Disney Plus, and fans discovering the show for the first time, so there's a lot that goes into this data. And it capped off 2023 as the most watched streaming original in America. I mean, that's fantastic. And even though it wasn't, in my opinion, the best season of the first 3, that should be very encouraging, not just for the 4th season, but also for the Mandalorian movie by Dave Filoni. In other Star Wars news, Sharmeen Obaid Chinoy, the director of the upcoming 2026 Rey film, has opened up about what we can expect, saying, quote, "I'm very thrilled about the project because I feel we're about to create something very special, and we're in 2024 now." And then she says, "And it's about time we had a woman come forward to shape a story in a galaxy far, far away." I don't think that should matter. It's not about that. It's about the story you're creating. It's about Star Wars. Nothing more, nothing less. And also, just an aside, did she forget Bryce Dallas Howard, Deborah Chow, Steph Green, and a handful of others? But look, I get it, and I do wish Sharmeen Obaid Chinoy the best for a Star Wars movie. Hopefully it's great. That's all I can really say at this point. So now my dear friends, moving on. 2024 has finally arrived, and we have 4 projects to look forward to: The Acolyte, Skeleton Crew, Tales of the Jedi Season 2, and The Bad Batch Season 3. And on top of these, we're probably going to get a range of announcements, maybe a few trailers, we have some video games coming out such as Star Wars Outlaws, and fingers crossed, it's a great year for the franchise. But we also have 3 major Star Wars anniversaries, one of them being more major and significant than the other 2, and it's the one that Lucasfilm is celebrating with action figures, the re-release of the official video game, and a lot more. I'm talking about the 25th anniversary of the Phantom Menace. We also have the 10th anniversary of Star Wars Rebels, and the 40th anniversary of Caravan of Courage. But the 25th, celebrating Episode 1, is no doubt the most significant. And so in this segment, I want to talk a bit about Episode 1, because 2024 in and of itself is a year where Star Wars is really moving into a new direction. And back in 1999, that is what the Phantom Menace did for Star Wars as well. We're living at a time where a lot of fans are very upset with the way Star Wars is being handled by Disney. You often hear the rhetoric that Star Wars is dead. And while the prequel trilogy has seen a huge resurgence in popularity, it's important to note original trilogy fans back in '99, who had huge expectations for George Lucas's prequel trilogy, were also feeling this sense of dismay. The issue of Time magazine with interviews from the cast and crew that was hyping the Phantom Menace stated, "There has arguably never been a film that's been met with such overwhelming anticipation. In fact, reports a year prior in 1998 of theatre screenings of films like The Waterboy and Meet Joe Black claimed patrons purchased tickets of those films just to see a preview of The Phantom Menace." So when the movie finally came out, and Star Wars' return to the big screen failed to reach audiences' lofty expectations, at least in terms of quality, there was a disturbance felt in the Force by a large percentage of the fandom. It really did send the fanbase into a flux, and the entirety of the prequel trilogy ended up being a generational thing. Kids at the time are now massive fans of episodes 1, 2 and 3, and yet, The Phantom Menace shares the closest resemblance to George Lucas's overarching vision for what Star Wars should be in the future. For the prequel trilogy, it was all George. No Irvin Kershner, no Richard Marquand, And what's really interesting is that so many people today call themselves George Lucas purists, and they're often referring to the original trilogy, but what he achieved with episode 1 and then episodes 2 and 3 was self-confessed to be the purest form of the meaning of Star Wars, with all of its flaws, the Jar Jar stuff, the comic relief, and the ever-evolving story. He never wanted Star Wars to be stagnant and to always be the same thing. That's why episode 1 defied expectations by taking the franchise in a very different direction. It's why so many fans felt a disconnect between what was done in episodes 4, 5 and 6, the original trilogy, and this. They expected the tone and the aesthetic of Return of the Jedi. At the time leading up to the filming of The Phantom Menace, Lucas was less of a filmmaker and more of a conductor of groundbreaking special effects. No one denied this. He was at the helm of his own visual effects company, ILM, Industrial Light and Magic. His fixation on special effects is well documented at this point, as in '97 when they were filming episode 1, the original trilogy was re-released into theatres, which we now know as the special editions, with quite a few changes as well as superfluous adjustments to what many considered already a perfect trilogy. And Lucas didn't really care about what fans thought. It was his vision, so what he was able to achieve in the late 90s and early 2000s, with digital and special effects in CG coming into prominence, were very much in line with what he saw Star Wars doing in the future, well before he sold to Disney. And the irony is rather blatant. The Phantom Menace is aesthetically sharper than any of its successors. And if you were around in '99, everyone was talking about the pod race scene and the fight with Darth Maul at the end. Those were the two mind-blowing, wow, standout moments. The moments you told your friends and family about. And we've spoken in depth on the channel about how The Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones were respectively revolutionary for cinema. However, it's the characters, the approachable story, and the thematic ideas that forgive any wooden dialogue and the other criticisms and flaws that fans were quick to point out. But people were saying back then, Star Wars is dead. And yet the legacy of The Phantom Menace exists to this very day. The world building in the prequel trilogy is second to none. So now that we're in the new year, we need to remember as Star Wars approaches a new dawn, that sometimes change can be a good thing. And that shows like The Acolyte, which is doing something very different, a live action High Republic show, might give us something great. But let me know your thoughts on everything we spoke about in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video guys, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. May the Force be with you, always.